be the one to address Chapter 34. Ms. Ziganay will explain Chapter 35 and Ms. Tabora will have the distinction of doing the same for Chapter 36 and 37. Ms. Bagain will explain Chapter 38. After that, Ms. Agbayani Joanna will finish up Chapters 39 and 40. Chapter 34, Transfer of Environmentally Sound Technology, Cooperation and Capacity Building. Environmentally sound technologies protect the environment, are less polluting, use all resources in a more sustainable manner, recycle more of their waste and products, and handle residual waste in a more acceptable manner than the technologies for which they were substitutes. Environmentally sound technologies are not just individual technologies, but total systems which include know-how procedures, goods and services, and equipment as well as organizational and managerial procedures. The activities proposed in this chapter aim at improving conditions and processes on information access to and transfer of technology, including the state-of-the-art technology and related know-how, in particular to developing countries, as well as on capacity building and cooperative arrangements and partnerships in the field of technology in order to promote sustainable development. New and efficient technologies will be essential to increase the capabilities, in particular of developing countries, to achieve sustainable development, sustain the world's economy, protect the environment, and alleviate poverty and human suffering. Basis for action. This chapter of Agenda 21 is without prejudice to specific commitments and arrangements on transfer of technology to be adopted in specific international instruments, providing adequate information on the environmental aspects of present technologies consists of two interrelated components: upgrading information on present and state-of-the-art technologies, including their environmental risks, and improving access to environmental sound technologies. The primary goal of improved access to technology information is to enable informed choices leading to access to and transfer of such technologies and the strengthening of countries' own technological capabilities. The following objectives are proposed to help to ensure the access, in particular of developing countries, to scientific and technological information, including information of the state-of-the-art technologies, to promote, facilitate, and finance as appropriate the access to and the transfer of environmentally sound technologies and corresponding know-how, in particular to developing countries, to facilitate the maintenance and promotion of environmentally sound indigenous technologies that may have been neglected or displaced, in particular in developing countries, paying particular attention to their priority needs and taking into account the complementary role of men and women. Activities development of international information networks which link national, sub-regional, regional, and international systems. Existing national, sub-regional, regional, and international information systems should be developed and linked through regional clearinghouses covering broad-based sectors of the economy such as agriculture, industry, and energy. Such a network might inter alia include national, sub-regional, and regional patent offices that are equipped to produce reports on state-of-the-art technology. Support of and promotion of access to transfer of technology. Governments and international organizations should promote and encourage the private sector to promote effective modalities for the access and transfer, in particular to developing countries, of environmentally sound technologies by means of activities including the formulation of policies and programs for the effective transfer of environmentally sound technologies that are publicly owned or in the public domain. Creation of favorable conditions to encourage the private and public sectors to innovate, market, and use environmentally sound technologies. improvement of the capacity to develop and manage environmentally sound technologies, national capacities to assess, develop, manage, and apply new technologies should be developed. This will require strengthening existing institutions, training of personnel at all levels, and education of the end user of the technology. Establishments of a collaborative network of research centers, a collaborative network of national, sub-regional, regional, and international research centers of environmentally sound technology should be established to enhance the access to and development, management, and transfer of environmentally sound technologies, including transfer and cooperation among developing countries and between developed and developing countries. Support for programs of cooperation and assistance. Support should also be provided for national, sub-regional, regional, multilateral, and bilateral programs of scientific research, dissemination of information, and technology development among developing countries, including through the involvement of both public and private enterprises and research facilities, as well as funding for technical cooperation among developing countries programs in this area. Next would be technology assessment in the support of the management of environmentally sound technology. The international community, in particular, United Nations agencies, international organizations, and other appropriate and private organizations should help exchange experiences and develop capacity for technology needs assessment, in particular in developing countries, to enable them to make choices based on environmentally sound technologies. And lastly, collaborative arrangements and partnerships. Long-term collaborative arrangements should be promoted between enterprises of developed and developing countries for the development of environmentally sound technologies. Multinational companies as a repositories of technology skills needed for the protection and enhancements of the environment have a special role and interest in promoting cooperation in and related to technology transfer, as they are important channels for such as transfer and for building a trained human resource pool and infrastructure. Means of implementation, financing, and cost evaluation. The Conference Secretariat has estimated the average total annual cost in 1993 to 2000 of implementing the activities of this chapter to be between $450 million and $600 million from the international community on grant or concessional terms. These are indicative and order of magnitude estimates only and have not been reviewed by governments. Actual costs and financial terms, including any that are non-concessional, will depend upon inter alia, the specific strategies and programs governments decide upon for implementation.
Chapter 35, Science for Sustainable Development. This chapter focuses on the role and the use of the sciences in supporting the prudent management of the environment and development for the daily survival and future development of humanity. The sciences are playing an important role in linking the fundamental significance of the Earth system as life support to appropriate strategies for development which build on its continued functioning. The sciences should continue to play an increasing role in the efficiency of resource utilization and in finding the new development practices, resources, and alternatives. There is need for the sciences constantly to resist and promote less intensive trends in resource utilization, including less intensive utilization of energy in industry, agricultural, and transportation. Thus, the sciences lalong nauunawaan bilang isang mahalagang bahagi sa paghahanap ng mga posibleng daan patungo sa sustainable development. Scientific knowledge should be applied to articulate and support the goals of sustainable development through scientific assessment of current conditions and future prospects for the Earth system. Scientific knowledge refers to a generalized body of laws and theories to explain a phenomenon or behavior of interest that are acquired using the scientific method. How can science help sustainable development? Science is critical to tackle complex challenges for humanity such as climate change, biodiversity loss, population and poverty reduction, as it lays the foundation for new approaches and solutions. The program areas which are in harmony with the conclusions and recommendations of the International Conference on Agenda of Science for Environment and Development into the 21st century are strengthening the scientific basis for sustainable management, enhancing scientific understanding, improving long-term scientific assessment, and building up scientific capacity and capability. Strengthening the scientific basis for sustainable management. Basis for action. Sustainable development requires taking longer term perspectives, integrating local and regional effects of global change into the development process, and using the best scientific and traditional knowledge available. The development process should be constantly reevaluated in light of the findings of scientific research to ensure that resource utilization has reduced impacts on the Earth system. Good environmental and developmental management policies must therefore be scientifically robust, seeking to keep open a range of options to ensure flexibility of response. Often, there is a communication gap among scientists, policymakers, and the public at large whose interests are articulated by both governmental and non-governmental organizations. Better communication is required among scientists, decision makers, and the general public. Objective. The primary objective is for each country with the support of international organizations as requested to identify the state of its scientific knowledge and its research needs and priorities in order to achieve as soon as possible substantial improvements in improving cooperate between scientists by promoting interdisciplinary research programs and activities. Participation of people in setting priorities and decision making relating to sustainable development. Activities countries with the assistance of international organizations were required should develop methods to link the findings of the establishment sciences with the indigenous knowledge of different cultures. The method should be tested using pilot studies. They should be developed at the local level and should concentrate on the links between the traditional knowledge of indigenous groups and corresponding current advanced science with particular focus on disseminating and applying the results to environmental protection and sustainable development. Means of implementation, scientific and technological means. The scientific and technological means include the following: setting up demonstration models of different types to study methodologies and formulate guidelines, for example, socioeconomic, environmental conditions. Enhancing scientific understanding. In order to promote sustainable development, more extensive knowledge is required of the Earth's carrying capacity, including the process that could either impair or enhance its ability to support life. The global environment is changing more rapidly than at any time in recent centuries. As a result, surprises may be expected, and the next century could see significant environmental changes. At the same time, the human consumption of energy, water, and non-renewable resources is increasing on both a total and a per capita basis, and shortage may ensure in many parts of the world even if environmental conditions were to remain unchanged. Human factors are key driving forces in these intricate sets of relationships and exert their influence directly on global change. Therefore, study of the human dimensions of the causes and consequences of environmental change and of more sustainable development paths is essential. Objectives. One key objective is to improve and increase the fundamental understanding of the linkages between human and natural environmental system and improve the analytical and predictive tools required to better understand the environmental impacts of development options by activities. The following activities should be undertaken: support development of an expanded monitoring network to describe cycles and test hypotheses regarding their behavior, and improve research into the interactions among the various global cycles and their consequences at national, subregional, regional, and global levels as guides to tolerance and vulnerability. For example, the global biogeochemical and the hydrological cycles. In order to understand the Earth as a system, develop Earth observation system from space, which will provide integrated, continuous, and long-term measurements of the interactions of the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere, and develop a distribution system for data which will facilitate the utilization of data obtained through observation. Develop and apply systems and technology that automatically collect, record, and transmit data and information to data and analysis centers in order to monitor marine, terrestrial, and atmospheric processes and provide advance warning of natural disasters. Means of implementation: scientific and technological means. The scientific and technological means include the following: supporting and using the relevant national research activities of academia, research institutes, and governmental and non-governmental organizations, and promoting their active participations in regional and global programs, particularly in developing countries. Increasing the use of appropriate enabling systems and technologies such as supercomputers, space-based observational technology, earth and ocean-based observational technologies, data management, and database technologies, and in particular, developing and expanding the global climate observing system. Improving long-term scientific assessment. Basis for action: meeting scientific research needs in the environment development field is only the first step in the support that the sciences can provide for the sustainable development process. The knowledge acquired may then be used to provide scientific assessments, like audits, of the current status and for a range of possible future conditions. Although many of the long-term environmental changes that are likely to affect people and the biosphere are global in scale, key changes can often be made at the national and local levels. Thus, scientific assessments and projections are required at the global, regional, and local levels. Regional and global assessment could make full use of such reports but should be broader in scope and include the results of detailed studies of future conditions for a range of assumptions and about possible future human responses using the best available models. The primary objective is to provide assessments of the current status and trends in major developmental and environmental issues at the national, subregional, regional, and global levels on basis of the best available scientific knowledge in order to develop alternative strategies, including indigenous approaches for the different scales of time and space required for long-term policy formulation.
Chapter 36: Promoting Education, Public Awareness, and Training Education. Raising of public awareness and training are linked to virtually all areas in Agenda 21, and even more closely to the ones on meeting basic needs, capacity building, data and information, science, and the role of major groups. This chapter sets out broad proposals, while specific suggestions related to sectoral issues are contained in other chapters. the declaration and recommendations of the Tbilisi Intergovernmental Conference on Environmental Education 1, organized by UNESCO and UNEP and held in 1977, have provided the fundamental principles for the proposals in this document. Program areas described in the present chapter are increasing public awareness, promoting training for the program areas, reorienting education towards sustainable development. Basis for action. Education, including formal education, public awareness, and training, should be recognized as a process by which human beings and societies can reach their fullest potential. Education is critical for promoting sustainable development and improving the capacity of the people to address environment and development issues. Both formal and non-formal education are indispensable to changing people's attitudes so that they have the capacity to assess and address their sustainable development concerns. It is also critical for achieving environmental and ethical awareness, values and attitudes, skills and behavior consistent with sustainable development, and for effective public participation in decision making. To be effective, environment and development education should deal with the dynamics of both the physical, biological, and socio-economic environment, and human, which may include spiritual development, should be integrated in all disciplines and should employ formal and non-formal methods and effective means of communication. Objectives: recognizing that countries, regional, and international organizations will develop their own priorities and schedules for implementation in accordance with their needs, policies, and programs. The following objectives are proposed to endorse the recommendations arising from the World Conference on Education for All Meeting Basic Learning Needs 2 by Jomtien, Thailand, 5 to 9 March 1990, and to strive to ensure universal access to basic education, to achieve environmental and development awareness in all sectors of society on a worldwide scale as soon as possible, to strive to achieve the accessibility of environmental and development education linked to social education, from primary school age through adulthood to all group of people. Activities: recognizing that countries and regional and international organizations will develop their own priorities and schedules for implementation in accordance with their needs, policies, and programs. The following activities are proposed. All countries are encouraged to endorse the recommendations of the Jomtien Conference and strive to ensure its framework for action. This would encompass the preparation of national strategies and actions for meeting basic learning needs, universalizing access, and promoting equity, broadening the means and scope of education, developing a supporting policy context, strengthening international cooperation to address existing economic, social, and gender disparities which interfere with these aims. Governments should strive to update or prepare strategies aimed at integrating environment and development as a cross-cutting issue into education at all levels within the next 3 years. There is a need to strengthen, within 5 years, information exchange by enhancing technologies and capacities necessary to promote environment and development education and public awareness. Means of implementation, financing, and cost evaluation. The Conference Secretariat has estimated the average total annual cost on 1993 to 2000 of implementing the activities of this program to be about 8 billion to 9 billion, including about 3.5 billion to 4.5 billion from the international community on grant or concessional terms. These are indicative and order of magnitude estimates only and have not been reviewed by governments. Strategies and programs governments decide upon for implementation. In the light of country-specific situations, more support for education, training, and public awareness activities related to environment and development could be provided, in appropriate cases through measures such as the following: giving higher priority to those sectors in budget allocations, protecting them from structural cutting requirements, shifting allocations within existing education budgets in favor of primary education with focus on environment and development, promoting conditions where a larger share of the cost is borne by local communities, which rich communities assisting poorer ones. Chapter 37, National Mechanisms and International Cooperation for Capacity Building in Developing Countries. Program Area Basis for Action. The ability of a country to follow sustainable development path is determined to a large extent by the capacity of its people and its institutions as well as by its ecological and geographical conditions. Specifically, capacity building encompasses the country's human, scientific, technological, organizational, institutional, and resource capabilities. A fundamental goal of capacity building is to enhance the ability to evaluate and address the crucial questions related to policy choices and modes of implementation among development options, based on an understandings of environmental potentials and limits and of needs as perceived by the people of the country concerned. As a result, the need of strengthened national capacities is shared by all countries. Objectives. The overall objectives of indigenous capacity building in this program area are to develop and improve national and related regional and regional capacities and capabilities for sustainable development. With the involvement of the non-governmental sectors, the program should assist by shifting time horizons in program planning and implementation for the development and strengthening of institutional structures to permit an enhancement of their ability to respond to new longer term challenges rather than concentrating only on immediate problems, improving and reorienting existing international multilateral institutions with responsibilities for environment and development matters to ensure that those institutions have the capability and capacity to integrate environment and development. Specific objectives include the following. Each country should aim to complete as soon as practicable, if possibly by 1994, a review of capacity and capability building requirements for devising national sustainable development strategies, including those for generating and implementing its own Agenda 21 action program. Activities: building a national consensus and formulating capacity building strategies for implementing Agenda 21. Evaluation of existing capacity and capability for the integrated management of environment and development, including technical, technological, and institutional capacities and capabilities and facilities to assess the environmental impact of development projects, and evaluation of abilities to respond to and link up with needs for technical cooperation, including that related to technology transfer and know-how of Agenda 21 and the Global Conventions on Climate Change and Biological Diversity. Means of implementation, financing, and cost evaluation. The cost of bilateral expenditures to developing countries for technical cooperation, including that related to transfer of technology and know-how, is about $15 billion, or about 25% of total official development assistance. The implementation of Agenda 21 will require a more effective use of these funds and additional funding in key areas. The Conference of Secretariat has estimated the average total annual cost of 1993 to 2000 of implementing the activities of this chapter to be between 300 million and 1 billion for from the international community on grant or concessional terms. These are indicative and order of magnitude estimates only and have not been reviewed by governments.
Agenda 21, Chapter 38, International Institutional Arrangement, Basis for Actions. 38.1, the mandate of the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development emanates from General Assembly Resolution 44/228. The conference shall elaborate strategies and measures to halt and reverse the effects of environmental degradations. Governments, regional economic and technical corporations, organizations have a responsibility to play an important role in the follow-up to the conference. 38.2, there is a need for institutional arrangements within the United Nations system in conformity with providing input into the restructuring and revitalizations of the United Nations in the economic, social, and related fields. The implementations of Agenda 21 and other conclusions of the conference shall be based on actions and result-oriented approach. 38.3 The United Nations system, with its multi-sectoral capacity and extensive experience of a number of special agencies and various spheres of international corporations in the field of environment and development, is uniquely positioned to assist governments to establish more effective patterns of economic and social development with a view to achieving the objectives of Agenda 21 and sustainable development. 38.4 There should be an effective division of labor between various parts of the United Nations system based on their terms of reference and cooperative advantages. Serious and continuous reviews of their policies, programs, budgets, and activities will also be required. Member states in the positions to ensure that these tasks are carried out properly. 38.5 The the continued active and effective participations of non-governmental organizations, the scientific community, and the private sector as well as local groups and communities are important in the implementations of Agenda 21. 38.6 There must be an effective link between substantive actions and financial support, and this requires close and effective cooperation and exchange of information between the two systems. Objectives 38.7 The overall objective is the integrations of environmental and development issues at national, sub-regional, regional, and international levels, including the United Nations system institutional arrangements. 38.8 Specific objectives shall be letter A to ensure and review the implementations of Agenda 21 so as to achieve sustainable development in all countries. B. To enhance the role and functioning of the United Nations system in the field of environment and development. All relevant agencies, organizations, and programs of the United system should adopt concrete programs to the implementations of Agenda 21 and also provide policy guidance for United Nations activities or advice to governments upon request within their areas or competence. Letter C. To strengthen cooperations and coordinations on environment and development the United Nations system. Letter D. To encourage interactions and cooperation between the United Nations system and other intergovernmental and non-governmental, sub-regional, regional, global institutions and non-governmental organizations in the field of the environment and development. E. The strengthening institutional capabilities and arrangement required to the effective implementations, follow-up review of Agenda 21. Letter F. To assist the strengthening and coordination of national, sub-regional, and regional capacity and actions in areas of environment and development. Letter G. To establish effective cooperation and exchange of information United Nations, organs, organizations, programs, and multilateral financial bodies within the institutional arrangement for the follow-up of Agenda 21. Letter H. To respond to continuing of emerging issues relating to environment and development. Letter I. To ensure that any new institutional arrangements would support revitalizations, clear divisions of responsibility, and the avoidance of duplications in the United Nations, and depend of the maximum extent possible upon existing resources. 38.9 The General Assembly could consider holding a special session not later than 1997 for the overall review and appraisal of Agenda 21. With adequate preparations at a high level, the Assembly would organize a regular review of the implementation of agenda item as well as their impact of international affairs. Letter B. Economic and Social Council. 38.10 The Economic and Social Council should be oversee system-wide coordinations in the implementations of Agenda 21 and make recommendations to the General Assembly, especially agencies concerned and member states. The Council should organize a periodic review of the work of the Commissions of Sustainable Development envisaged in paragraph 38.11. Commission of Sustainable Development. 38. 38.11 High-level commissions on sustainable development should be established in accordance with the Article 68 of the Charter of the United Nations. Commission will report the Economic and Social Council in the context of the Council role under the Charter bis the General Assembly. The first meeting of the Commission should be convened no later than 1993. 38.12 The General Assembly, as its 47 sessions, shall determine a specific organizational modalities of work of this commission, such as membership, relationship with their intergovernmental United Nations bodies, dealing with the matters related to the environment and development. The frequency, duration, venue, its meeting shall be also determined. 38.13 The Commission of Sustainable Development shall be the following factions. A. The programs aim to improve the quality and effectiveness of international environment and development efforts, including those related to implementations of Agenda 21. Letter B. To consider information provided by governments, including, for example, information in the form of periodic communications or national reports regarding the activities they undertake to implement Agenda 21, the problem they face, such as problems related to financial resources and technology transfer and other environment and development issues by the final relevant. C. To review the programs in their implementations of the commitments contained in Agenda 21, including those related to provisions of financial resources, transfer of technology. D. To receive and analyze relevant input from component non-governmental organizations, including the scientific and private sector, in the context of the overall implementations of Agenda 21. The facilitation of informations exchange on environmental sound technologies, including legal aspects and provisions of training, Letter K. Promotion of sub-regional and regional cooperation and support to relevant initiatives and programs for environmental protections, including playing a major contributing and coordinating role in the regional mechanisms. Letter L. Provisions of technical, legal, and institutional advice of governments upon request in establishing and enhancing their national legal and institutional frameworks, in particular in cooperations with UNDP capacity building efforts. M. Support for governments upon request and develop agency and programs in their integration and environmental aspect into their development policies and programs, in particular through provisions of environmental, technical, and policy advice during program formulations of implementations. Letter N. Further developing assessments and assistance in cases of environmental emergency. K. Cooperations between United Nations bodies and international financial organizations. 38.41 The Secretary General and heads of United Nations programs, organizations, and multilateral financial organizations have a special responsibility in forging such as cooperations. The success of the follow-up to the conference is dependent upon an effective link between substantive actions and financial support. L. Non-governmental organizations. 38.42 Non-governmental organizations and major groups are important partners in the implementations of Agenda 21. They should be given opportunities to make their contributions and operate a relationship with the United Nations system. 38.43 The United Nations system, including international finance and development agencies and all intergovernment or all organizations and forums, should, in consultation with non-governmental organizations, take the measures to A. Design upon an effective means to achieve the participation of non-governmental organizations, including the related to major groups, in the process established to review and evaluate the implementations of Agenda 21 at all levels and promote their contributions to it.
Chapter 39 International Legal Instruments and Mechanisms. The recognition that the following vital aspects of the universal, multilateral, and bilateral treaty-making process should be taken into account. The further development of international law and sustainable development, giving special attention to the delicate balance between environmental and developmental concerns. The need to clarify and strengthen the relationship between existing international instruments or agreements in the field of environment and relevant social and economic agreements or instruments. Taking into account the special needs of developing countries, any, any negotiations for the progressive development and codification of international law concerning sustainable should, in general, be conducted on a universal basis, taking into account special circumstances in the various regions. The following objectives are proposed to set priorities for future lawmaking on sustainable development at the global, regional, or sub-regional level with a view of enhancing the efficacy of international law in this field through, in particular, integration of environmental and developmental concerns. To improve Another objective is to improve the effectiveness of institutions, mechanisms, and procedures for the administrations of agreements and instruments, and also to identify and prevent actual or potential conflicts, particularly between environmental, social, economic agreements or instruments, with a view to ensuring that such agreements or instruments are consistent. So the overall objectives of the review and development of international environmental law should be to evaluate and to promote the efficacy of the law and to promote the integration of environment and development policies through effective international agreements or instruments, taking into account both universal principles and the particular and differentiated needs and concerns of all countries. For activities and means of implementation should be considered in the light of the above basis for action and objectives without prejudice to the right of every state to put forward suggestions in this regard in the General Assemblies. This suggestion could be reproduced in a separate compilation on sustainable development. A. Review assessments and fields of action in international law for sustainable development, while ensuring the effective participation of all countries concerned. Parties should at periodic intervals review and assess both the past performance and effectiveness of existing international agreements or instruments, as well as the priorities for future lawmaking on sustainable development. This may include an examination of the feasibility of elaborating general rights and obligations of states as appropriate in the field of sustainable development. For letter B, implementation mechanisms. The parties to international agreements should consider procedures and mechanisms to promote and review their effective, full, and prompt implementation. To that effect, states could inter alia establish efficient and practical reporting system on the effective, full, and prompt implementation of international legal instruments. Considered appropriate ways in which relevant international bodies participation in international lawmaking. In all these activities and others that may be pursued in the future based on the above basis for action and objectives, the effective participation of all countries, in particular developing countries, should be ensured through appropriate provision of technical assistance or financial assistance. Another one is disputes in the field of sustainable development. In the area of avoidance and settlement of disputes, states should be further study and and consider methods to broaden and make more effective the range of techniques available at present, taking into account, among others, relevant experience under existing international agreements, instruments, or institutions, and where appropriate, their implementing mechanisms such as modalities for dispute avoidance and settlements. For the last chapter, chapter 40, is all about information for decision making. In sustainable development, everyone is a user and provider of information considered in the broad sense. That includes data, information, appropriately packaged experience, and knowledge. The need for information arises at all levels, from that of senior decision makers at the national and international levels to the grassroots and individual levels. The following two program areas need to be implemented to ensure that decisions are based increasingly on sound information. These are the two program areas: bridging the data gap and improving information availability. For bridging the data gap, while considerable data already exists, as the various sectoral chapters of Agenda 21 indicate, more and different types of data need to be collected at the local, provincial, national, and international levels, indicating status and trends of the planet ecosystems, natural resource, pollution, socioeconomic variables. The gap in the availability, quality, coherence, standardization, and accessibility of data between the developed and the developing world has been increasing, seriously impairing the capacities of countries to make informed decisions concerning environment and development. The following objectives are important to achieve more cost-effective and relevant data collection and assessment by better identification of users in both the public and private sectors, and of their information needs at the local, provincial, national, and international level. Another objective is to develop or strengthen the local, provincial, national, and international means of ensuring that planning for sustainable development in all sectors is based on timely, reliable, and usable information. Another one is to make relevant information accessible in the form and at the time required to facilitate its use. For Chapter 40, countries at the national level, international government, and non-governmental organizations at the international level should develop the concept of indicators of sustainable development in order to identify such indicators. Governments should consider undertaking the necessary institutional changes at the national level to achieve the integration of environmental and developmental information. At the international level, environmental assessment activities need to be strengthened and coordinated with efforts to assess development trends. Countries with the cooperation of international organizations should establish supporting mechanisms to provide local communities and resource users with information and know how they need to manage their environment and resources sustainability. Means of implementation: international cooperation for training in all areas and at all levels will be required, particularly in developing countries. The training will have to include technical training of those involved in data collection and transformation, as well as assistance to decision makers concerning how to use such information. All countries, particularly developing countries, with the support of international cooperation, their capacity to collect, store, organize, assess, and use data in decision making more efficiently. For improving availability of information within many countries is not adequately managed because of shortage of financial resources and trained manpower, lack of awareness of value and availability of such information, and other immediate or pressing problems. especially in developing countries. Even where information is available, it may not be easily accessible, either because of the lack of good technology for effective access or because of associated costs, especially for information held outside the country and available commercially. For objectives of improving information availability, national capacities should be strengthened, as should capacities within governments, non-government organizations, and the private sectors. In information handling and communication, particularly within developing countries, full participation of developing countries should be ensured in international scheme under the organs and organizations of United Nations system for the collection, analysis, and use of data and information. The activities: A. Production of information usable for decision making. Countries and international organizations should review and strengthen information system and service in sector related to sustainable development at the local, provincial, national, and international levels. Letter B. Establishments of standards and methods for handling information. Governments should consider supporting the efforts of governmental as well as non-governmental organizations to develop mechanisms for efficient and harmonized exchange of information at the local, national, provincial, and international levels, including revisions of establishments of data, access of disseminations, formats, and communication interference. Letter C. Making use of commercial information sources. Countries and international organizations should consider undertaking surveys of information available in the private sectors on sustainable development and of present dissemination arrangements to determine gaps and how the gaps could be filled by commercial or quasi-commercial activity, particularly activities involving developing countries where feasible. Means of implementation: developed countries and relevant international organizations should cooperate, in particular with developing countries, because to expand their capacity to receive, store and retrieve, contribute, disseminate, use and provide appropriate public access to relevant environment and developmental information by providing technology and training to establish local information services, and by supporting partnerships and cooperative agreements between countries and regional or sub-regional level. Developed countries and relevant international organizations should support research and develop in hardware, software, and other aspects of the information technology, in particular in developing countries, appropriate to their operations, national needs, and environmental context. That's all for our chapter 40. So that's our report for Agenda 21, chapters 34 to 40.